All right, everybody, welcome back to the Adventure RX podcast. This is your host, Nick Anderson with Pinpoint Physical Therapy. We have a really fun guest on today, Jillian Reyna, the owner and coach of Rise and Rain for runners and for racers and all the above. We'll have a nice, fun chat today. We'll get into some running stuff. We'll get into what Rise and Rain's all about. Maybe how PT and preventative can mesh in with, some higher level run coaching. So I'm excited to have you on today. Jillian, how are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me. And how are
Absolutely.
you?
Doing well. Have a good long day today with some fun patients. Glad we could take this little bit of time and chat. So it's always fun to get some, personal, fun, professional time in. It can be hard because we're all so busy.
Yeah. Yes, that is the truth.
For sure. So this Rise and Rain, tell me more about it. What's it all about?
Sure. So I started Rise and Rain in the summer of 2022 because running has been a part of my life for a while now. And I really wanted to give back to the running community. I had a lot of people reaching out to me for some advice and questions on how to go about training. I felt that I had an influence that I wanted to share and needed to share. And I've always had a goal of being some sort of a coach in the fitness industry. And it just kind of seemed like the right time. It just fell into place. And so started Rise and Rain and did it before I started my family on purpose in hopes that, not knowing where life would take us, but we all know that just with building family as life gets busier. So I wanted to do it while I had a little bit of time. And I'm glad I did because, yes, life has only gotten busier with my daughter. But anyway, so what is Rise and Rain about? It is about helping runners achieve what they didn't think they could. That's like in a summary statement. That's not my mission or vision statement or anything, but my slogan is rise to the challenge, reign in the process. So what that really means is enjoy the process. The finish line, your goal, whatever you're chasing, that should be the cherry on top. And, I just see people too often like doing training and not enjoying it because they think they have to achieve this goal.
Right.
And is it really worth it if we aren't enjoying it? We're not, majority of us are, I don't know if this is fortunate or unfortunate, but we're not professional athletes, majority of us. And some of us, I'm sure would love to be, but some of us are very grateful we're not. So we're doing this for fun. So it needs to be fun. It needs to stay that way. And that is one of my main priorities as a coach is keeping it fun and enjoyable for my athletes. But still inspiring them and motivating them to achieve their goals and believe in themselves in ways they didn't think they could. Yeah, that, and then, so really, rise up to those goals and then reign in that process.
I love that. I've seen some quotes that have talked about everyone's so focused on the destination, but you have to enjoy the process too, right? And that's in my realm, which I would say is not as enjoyable. Usually those that are in pain are injured, but you start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. That's when it becomes a little more enjoyable as far as the process goes. But no, I love that. Enjoying the process. That's huge. Now, with your own running, you're pretty experienced. Would you mind telling the audience just maybe some of your favorite races, your overall experience, and how that really helps you become, a better coach with your clients?
Sure. So I started running in high school. I started through the track team, was a gymnast majority of my life, and then switched over to running. But I always had good endurance, so running came pretty naturally to me. I was very lucky. But yeah, just started training with the cross country team. Loved it. Was decent enough that I made varsity immediately for my high school, which for my high school, we were going to the state meet. So we were
Nice.
Pretty good.
Pretty good team.
Yeah. And then I decided to walk on to my college team. So at the University of Akron, I didn't really have interest in being recruited like early enough. So that's why I decided to do walking on, because when I finally made my decision that I wanted to do it in college, recruiting was kind of over for me and my class. But anyway, I think it was the best decision to go that route anyway, because there were those high stakes of like, you have to be good at this, you have to perform. It was just go have fun, kind of like the whole, enjoy the process. And because again, I saw with my teammates, and I see it all the time, that there's a lot of pressure on collegiate athletes because there is scholarship and money at stake, whatever it may be. So anyway, I just went out and had fun, made friends, and enjoyed the process of being on the team, something I never thought I would do. I competed all 4.5 years, because I was there in college for 5, and ended up as a team captain, varsity letterman for all 4 years for cross country, and was also the MVP. So ended up
MVP.
doing way better. Thank you. Ended up doing way better than I thought I would. And so that was really cool. Took a little bit of a break from running after college, just because needed that. And since then, I have gotten back into it. It was really, I always did like the Akron half. So Akron, that's one of my favorite races. I was going to say as something I always do every year is the Akron half. It's a nice local race. They do a really good job putting it on. So even when I was taking that running break, I have done that race every single year since college. And then got into marathon running as well. My first marathon was Columbus. So that's a really great one. Another, I would say, local to those of us in Ohio. And then a few other favorites. I love the Cleveland race series. I love that they have the races on Saturday and then Sunday as well. So they have the 5K, 10K Saturday. So if you aren't a big long distance runner or you just want to walk, like they have those shorter races, and then the longer races on Sunday, the half and the full. And then one other final shout out, just because for the females listening, the women's 6K in the summer is a really great one. It's really empowering for women. It's a women's only race, which is really neat because that doesn't happen ever.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's just a cool one as well.
Very cool. Yeah, Cleveland has so many good running events in the Ohio area, especially. Definitely some unique events too. I'll shout out Hell on Hogsback Endurance Run. That's in Rocky River. That's going into its 3rd year. That's a 1 hour, 3 hour, or a 12-hour endurance race. The Conquer the Castle is also another 10-mile to up to an ultra, I think up to 100K maybe. That's in November. So yeah, some really cool events in the area.
Mm-hmm.
How many events are you currently doing yourself now per year? Like, do you have a goal every year of a certain amount of events?
I don't. So something I didn't say actually with the experience comment. So I've done 6 marathons.
Very nice.
Weirdly enough, like a lot of those marathons, like 2 of them have been in the same year, and some of that was like, okay, I got into it, then COVID happened, then got back. Then I got pregnant and then I was postpartum. So, there were some like weird off years there, but I would say personally, I don't do more than 2 marathons a year. I'm not a high mileage runner. My body really couldn't probably handle more than 2. So if I'm, wanting to do 2 marathons, then I kind of fit other things in around that. So I always like in my training plan to usually do a half throughout just to kind of test the wheels, see where you're at. And then, maybe like a 5K, 10K is nice towards the beginning as well. Again, just kind of seeing where you're at, having fun, getting out in the community.
Right.
So yeah, I try not to set too many guidelines for myself, if you will. Just again, maybe part of it for me is because I did have that collegiate past where the schedule was set for me. And I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
So now, I do what I want to do and what sounds fun.
I love that.
So yeah, I kind of just try to enjoy new races that I've never done, enjoy the ones that I love every year. And another race company that I forgot to mention, and that when you were mentioning some of the others in the area, is Hermes. They have so many great races. I've recently made some good connections and friendships with them and their staff. And they have a lot of awesome races. So I feel like, to your point, you could turn around and like any weekend find something around here.
They're starting in probably March. There's like 5K at least every weekend essentially in the Cleveland area between all the Hermes and Run the Land and the different companies. It's really cool. You mentioned being not a high mileage runner. Now, obviously that's subjective, right? For everybody.
Yeah.
Running the 2 marathons a year, are you doing like strength training? Are you doing preventative work? What does that routine look like? Because for most 2 marathons a year, I would consider that elite status. Like it's the 1% of runners that are doing that. So what are some of the tricks, other than your programming that you're using to, help you be able to sustain that?
Sure, that's a good question. Yes, strength training is super important. I try to strength train 2 to 3 times a week when I am, I mean, really all year, but especially when I'm training. When I'm in my peak weeks of like that high mileage for a marathon, sometimes you obviously have to back off of the strength just because your body is exhausted. So that's maybe when I'll cut back to 2 days a week, or I'll just cut back the amount that I'm lifting or just the
Okay.
volume of the workouts. But yeah, I mean, as a physical therapist, it's so important to be doing those exercises, even if it's not heavyweight. Like those are obviously very important, but yes, you need to be doing those. Well, something that comes to mind is like the Myrtle routine, like making sure you're focusing on your glutes and your hips, things like that,
Right,
or
right.
making sure, like I had a issue with my shin earlier this year and needed to be doing like calf eccentrics when I was strength training, just to, again, keep that area happy. Making sure I'm doing that 2 to 3 times a week. And then the other things I'm doing, I try to hop on the bike or some form of cross training 2 to 3 times a week as well. So that's where I'm getting the cardio volume
Sure.
without the impact on my body.
Nice.
So I have a Peloton. I love my Peloton. So I do that about 30 to 40 minutes, like I said, 2 to 3 times a week. And that can help me get my heart rate up to that zone 2. So for me, that's about in the like 115 to 130, 135 range.
Okay.
So it's not too hard, but you're working, like you're sweating, you're feeling it a little bit, but you get off the bike or the elliptical, swimming, whatever you choose to do for your cross training. I always say you should be feeling better. Like you should be feeling refreshed. Like I moved my body, I sweat, I feel good. I'm not exhausted.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? So the whole zone 2 training, fad, I guess you could call it, is really, really huge on social media, of all the different coaches and everything talking about, zone 2, zone 2, zone 2. From what I've seen in research, obviously it depends on what your goal is. But I would agree that majority of your training should be in zone 2 with, hitting your race pace, along with some speed work, thrown in. Generally it depends on the person, probably your client, but give me, let's say for me, so if I'm going to run, my goal would be a half marathon in the fall. What would a program look like for someone that I would say I'm in moderate cardiovascular fitness right now?
So the way I set up my training for most of my athletes is kind of following the 80-20 rule. So using that, what you were just saying about majority of training being in that zone 2. So 80% of your training is going to be easy and 20% is going to be a little bit higher intensity. That's where you'll practice your pace work or hills. Some people consider the long run in there. Depends on how long the long run is. When you're doing 20 miles, that is going to be more hard and straining on your body.
Right.
And I think, a comment on the fad real quick with the zone 2, because yes, it's all over social media. It's all over the internet. The thing is, it's really hard to know what your actual zones are for your heart rate unless you go get a VO2 max test done in an actual lab.
Right.
Your watch, your Garmin, it's going to tell you, like most of us or whatever we're wearing, the app's going to tell you after, like, hey, you spent this percentage in this zone. Unless you have those zones specifically prescribed for you, they're probably not completely accurate.
Right.
And so back to kind of, sorry, I'm like mixing the two, but back to your question about how I would train you. A tool that I use for my athletes that they get when they train with me is, we'll call it like a membership, I guess, to the training platform that I use, which currently I use V.O2. I'm sure no matter what training platform is used by coaches that they all kind of have something like this. But what it does that's really neat is I would ask you to give me, your PR or PRs in certain distances, and then your most recent race time. This will help prescribe your current fitness level. If you have never raced, or if you raced 5 years ago and haven't done anything since, then we might do a time trial. But this is going to help figure out, like I said, where you're at, and it's going to help assess what your training paces should be. And it's pretty good. And it doesn't use heart rate for that. It just uses calculations. And so back to the zone 2, I've had athletes like obsess over their heart rate on their watch, but we know that this watch on my wrist, this monitor is not going to be accurate. Like, it's just not. I wear a heart rate monitor when I run on my tread because I can look at it the whole time I'm running. Sometimes I'll wear it outside, but that's the most accurate I'm going to get.
Yeah.
But even that can be faulty sometimes if it's not
Right.
like
Are you
moist
talking,
enough.
are you talking a chest strap?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like if you don't set it up right, like if you don't get it wet, it just, there's certain things, and it's finicky is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And so that's why I like the zone, not, I'm saying zones, but the pace zones and targets that my coaching app helps prescribe, because it gives you like a minute range. So if you're feeling good one day, like you can be on the lower end of that easy range. If you're feeling really tired or beat up from a workout, like you might be on the higher end of that range. And it's nice because it's pretty proven and scientific. Like I said, it's based on numbers, right? So I like that because in order to get the correct heart rate zones, it's really hard. And then we all know that there's so many things that go into your heart rate. So yesterday, it might be really low. Today, it might be really high. Tomorrow, who knows, So I just think sometimes it's important to look at your heart rate and to use it as a baseline and to watch it, because it does tell us important information. But to not be too obsessive over it is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, sure. And VO2 max testing, I mean, you can do the estimated tests, the different treadmill tests and whatnot. Again, there's some standard deviation of error in those. They're not perfect. And finding a pure VO2 max test it's pricey, and it's hard to find. I'm sure there's a few in Cleveland that are doing it. But I like to use a heart rate, and I like to compare that just on my Garmin when I'm feeling RPE, rate of perceived exertion, right? I think that's such an underutilized chart or scale that, I use that quite often with my patients. Could be for any exercise, but just, okay, I feel like I'm at a 60% effort right now. What is that heart rate? Is it the zone 2 prescribed, per the zones for heart rate? But yeah, I think RPE is a really interesting scale that it sounds like your app kind of uses that built in with the time as well. So it kind of meshes all three together in a way. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think too, I agree with the RPE scale. One of the certifications I got, I call it easy pace, but they called it conversation pace, meaning like if you can't have a conversation, then it's not easy pace.
Okay.
And it's exactly what you're saying. Like if you're huffing and puffing having a conversation on your easy run, then you're running too fast.
Yeah, I like that.
So,
yeah.
Some people say the singing test, like if you're alone, can you sing a short little song? And if you're completely out of breath, then you need to slow down. So yeah, I mean, there's different little things, but I agree. RPE scale is really what I try to hone in on my athletes with. It's like, do you feel like you are recovered from this run? If you feel like more tired after it, then you probably went too fast.
Went a little too fast.
And as training at the beginning, we can get away with that, even though we shouldn't. But as training ramps up, especially for a marathon, when you are putting in a lot of work, you're going to be tired if you keep running like that. You're going to be grateful to slow down. So.
Right. That comes into the whole enjoying the process, not wearing down. With the marathon training, there'll be a little more breakdown, as the mileage goes up. But again, if you're always pushing that pace, too often, just like anything in the body, too much, too quickly, too fast, it's going to tip the scale into more of the breakdown versus the buildup, inflammation increase. And then that opens a whole nother can of worms for running performance as well, whether it be tendinopathies or stress injuries or what have you. There's a whole can of worms we could get into, talk about for hours, I'm sure.
Totally. Uh-huh. Yeah, actually, on that topic real quick, when I was postpartum last year and coming back, I was doing very low. I mean, I wasn't doing intensity at all. I was just running easy miles, and it was also the slowest I'd ever run in my life because I needed to. And it was the first time where I was like, wow, I'm not feeling all those weird aches and pains that I normally feel. And it was just very eye-opening to me because I mean, college running is very intense, and I mean, even high school, because it's very competitive and you're constantly pushing the envelope. You're constantly probably running too fast. I ran too fast all the time in college. And finally, I feel like I learned to really slow down postpartum because I had to. And it was very eye-opening to me. Wow, how much my body isn't hurting
Right.
because I'm recovering and I'm going slow enough. So it was just to your point, it volume and intensity. And if you do too much too fast, very much your body's going to halt you.
Right. Yeah. Did you seek out any physical therapy postpartum to return to run? Any type of pelvic floor therapy? Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that
Pelvic
is,
floor was
yeah,
huge for me.
it's huge. It's huge. I don't offer that myself, but I have some friends and colleagues that do. I wish that I think it's gaining some steam, especially in the active woman, female community. But I think 90 to 99% of postpartum women should at least seek a consultation, right? It's major trauma. And, to get back to running, weightlifting, sports, even day-to-day stuff. I think it's gaining steam. I really do.
It is.
And
I do
I
think
hope it
it's,
continues to.
yeah, I agree. I think it's becoming more popular and more talked about. But yeah, I agree. If there's any women listening that are pregnant or planning to be pregnant or are postpartum, even if you're a few years out postpartum, like check in with a pelvic floor physical therapist. It sincerely changed my, uh,
Absolutely.
I, even after I was a year out of postpartum, I don't know. I think you're considered postpartum for a year. And then after that, I think that term technically kind of goes away. But when I was training for the New York City Marathon, which was in November, that training was basically all out of the like post year mark. And I still had a lot of like pelvic pain. And so I had to go back to pelvic floor. Like I thought I was better.
Right.
And no, I was with her through the race again. So it's probably like for me, unfortunately, like I might always deal with some pelvic pain. I don't know why, who knows why we deal with different injuries. Everybody's body's different. But yeah, pelvic floor, I wouldn't be able to have done those races last year if I didn't go to
Yeah,
pelvic floor.
absolutely. Shout out to my pelvic floor therapist for sure. Can put some recommendations in the Cleveland area in the description for this. I'll shout out a couple. Yeah, no, absolutely. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on shoes? Shoes are expensive, Jillian. They're really expensive. It's like running's free, but not really because you have these $300 shoes that are carbon plated and super light, and you got race shoes and you got training shoes. And what are your thoughts on? I have my own thoughts on it. I use the Brooks Ghost. It's a zero drop. It's wide toe box. My feet are pretty wide, high arches. I have some good insoles from Cadence insoles. And that's just what I use all the time. I don't have another pair for my long runs. I don't have like a race pair. Maybe eventually I'll get a couple pair.
Mm-hmm.
But shoes are expensive. Like I don't know if I can, get 3 or 4 different pairs of shoes. I'll try to replace them, with the recommended dosage of mileage, obviously. But what are your thoughts?
So I think like anything, there's trends, there's popularities,
Oh, yeah.
there's all that. And there's like the cool thing to do, whatever. So I think what you said for yourself, like having the Brooks Ghost and having that as your only shoe, I think that's totally fine. I trained through college with one shoe majority of the time.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing majority easy running, you don't need all of these shoes. The thing that makes me cringe the most is when I get athletes coming to me and then I'm like, what shoes are you wearing? Because maybe something's bothering them and they're wearing a carbon plated racing shoe for all of their miles. And
For
I'm
all,
like,
yeah.
no.
Well, you see the expensive shoe, you think it's better, right? Like that's not all. That's the case.
No. And to shout out, so you said you have a high arch. So I'm the opposite. I have a very flat arch. I have to wear stability shoes. So I feel like I always say this and it's just, you're going to laugh, but I think that the stability shoe runners are discriminated against because we have so many less shoes and none of the racing flats they're all neutral. And then you have to get insert of the like, oh gosh, what are those things called? Like the insoles to have a little bit of arch support. So yes, we do not have the same opportunities for shoes as everyone else, but
Yeah. Oh my God.
there are plenty of good options for us stability shoe wearers.
Yeah.
But
We got to write some letters. That's going
yeah,
on here.
yeah. But no, that's like number one. If you are a newer runner, or if like you notice that your feet are hurting a lot, like look at your arches. And if your arches are collapsing, then you probably need a stability shoe. And that's something that obviously
Yes.
like Nick could help with if you see him for physical therapy, or if you go to a local running store, ask them like, hey, can you look at my feet? Do you think I should be in a stability or neutral. They're usually pretty good about that, and they
Right.
know just by looking at your feet. And, there's like very intense stability shoes, and then there's more mid-range, and then there's the obviously like neutral that you wear. But I love the stability version of the Ghost, which is, I believe it's the Adrenaline, and then there's also the Glycerin, and now it's like the Glycerin GTS, Adrenaline GTS, which the GTS means like guard rail something. It's their terminology for having the support for the arch. I ran all three of my Boston marathons in Glycerin GTS.
Nice.
That is not a racing shoe. That is a cushiony, comfy training shoe. I love that shoe. And I did fine. My PR literally is in a Glycerin GTS
Sweet.
on the Boston course. So like, you don't need the fast, snazzy, whatever shoe. Now, is there a reason that they make those shoes, and is there a reason that the pros wear them? Yes, because when you're at that level, it is going to take some time off. And have I raced in them myself? Yes. Like, I have a few pairs, but are they necessary? No. And again, going back to like, if you have really finicky feet, or if you're injury prone or what have you, if you don't like the way that those fast shoes feel, then just wear what feels good. Because I remember the first time I tried on the fast shoes thinking that I needed them. And I was like, oh, these don't feel good at all. And I ended up finding one I liked, and I did get it. But I don't think that that's why I like ran the times I ran, Nothing will replace hard work. Like, it's kind of like wearing a cotton t-shirt or wearing like a dry fit t-shirt.
Dry fit.
Is that making you faster? No. I'm sure some people out there are disagreeing with me when I say that, but
yeah,
like I said, yes, those shoes are made to make you like a little bit faster, but it's going to show up more the faster you are. So I'm not saying for us average runners that you can't wear a racing flat shoe that's carbon plated. If that's what you want and you like that better, the way it feels on your body and your feet than the normal trainers, then so be it, and wear it.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just trying to say, like, you don't have to.
Yeah, I think reducing the barrier of entry into any sport is huge. I'm into some more expensive sports, skiing, whitewater kayaking, and running. And, getting more people involved is always good, right? Like, build a community. And I think that's huge. Find a shoe that fits and feels well. Most stores, at least that are local, smaller stores, local brands, will let you at least try them out a little bit in the store or outside if it's, not super muddy out. And, get insoles that fit well, running based insoles. Cadence, the company I work with, are pretty good. And there's tons of good brands. Look at your arch. Is it dropping? Is it a high arch? You got wide feet, get a wide toe box, and just find something that works. I mean, I think the Ghosts were about $150 or so. There's mileage recommendations on them, and I think most runners probably push that a little bit, versus replacing them early, probably push them more into the later health of the shoe. But yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated. Between 100 and 200 bucks. Don't go run in Converse, get something with a little support.
Yeah.
Reducing that barrier to entry of the sport, because once you're in, then it's free. I mean, you can go run anywhere. You don't need a treadmill. Just go. You don't need a track. Just go run.
Exactly. Yeah. And, one other comment on the shoe thing, like, besides the carbon plated stuff, like, we'll make those a separate category. Like I said, there's shoes that are really cushy, which I have a pair that I love. And then I have a pair that are a little bit more firm. And I usually rotate between two pairs, depending on the run I have and how my body's feeling. But to your point, again, if you really like the cushion shoe or if you really like the firm shoe, just pick what you like. And it doesn't need to be complicated. Most of us make it complicated. But yeah, and that's back to your point of then once you get the shoes, running is free. But yeah, I mean, that's like my favorite thing about the sport is that you can do it anywhere, anytime. When I travel, I can't take my weights with me, but I can wear my running shoes on the plane. And guess what? I can run when I get there. And that's like my favorite part.
Yeah. Exactly. Lower that entry to sports. It's huge. I like to work with runners at my practice. I've had a handful of elite runners that have come in for various reasons, whether it be maintenance, whether it be getting on a strength and conditioning program. What else? The dry needling, the cupping, the scraping, the massage work, all that can help, especially if you're in season or, in your cycle of training. Have you tried any of the maintenance type work as, part of your cycle of training?
Yeah, so I am on the like highly conservative side of almost everything with training. I as soon as something like bothers me, I am into a PT and I try to keep a maintenance routine appointment just because of that exact thing. Like we know this is hard on our bodies. We know we have, as we said at the beginning, we're busy. We're unfortunately a little bit stressed and we probably don't sleep enough. And so we have all these things fighting against us, and then we're pushing our body. And so
Right.
having physical therapy in your back pocket is the most important thing I think that you can do for yourself to keep yourself healthy. It's just funny the like stigma around it. Like my mom will be like, is something wrong? Like, why are you going to the doctor? And I'm like, I
Right.
had to train her on it. Like, no, like going in a routine maintenance like every 6 to 8 weeks is good for you. And I've actually got her on that with like going to the chiropractor that way. So like I'm glad she's kind of heard me because it makes you feel better instead of like being proactive, I guess, instead of waiting and being reactive, like, oh my gosh, my body is like breaking, I need to go see somebody.
Yes, yes, yes.
So yeah, no, totally recommend physical therapy. And that's actually kind of a question I have for you, I
Yeah,
guess, is
sure.
like how with the runners and I guess really any athlete that you see, do you see more of the maintenance proactive type, or do you see more people that are kind of coming in that emergency situation, like help, I need like something's
Yeah.
bothering me?
Yeah, it's split for sure. I'd say maybe even 50-50 where, I'm out at these events. I try to do 5 or 6 a year where I'm out. I set up my booth, I meet people, shake hands, get them on my table, help them after races. Those patients generally turn into, maintenance where they're coming in every so often, maybe before their next event. And those sessions can be, whatever that's needed, stretching, manual work, needling, cupping, scraping, all that, more of the passive work. You know, those type of patients, though, I know that they're training. I know they're doing their stuff, right? Someone that comes in that's actually injured, let's say it's a tendinopathy or it's a muscle strain, shin splints, something like that. You're going to need more than just that passive modality. One of the bad myths of physical therapy is, you see the ultrasound machine. Everyone gets ultrasound. Okay, go on the table. All right, now you get 10 minutes of massage. All right, and now you get an ice pack for 10 minutes. All right, and then you go, right? And that is so old school, and that's generally not what people need. They don't need rest. That is rest. Essentially, that's the passive modalities like that. There's nothing active going on. You're not strengthening, you're not stretching, you're not working on mobility. So I like to work with both. Trying to put the fires out can be fun, but just throwing, unless it's like, hey, I'm racing in 2 weeks, we got to get this thing calmed down. Just throwing modalities at an injury like that generally is not the way to go as far as a long-term solution. It's getting down to, is it a running technique error? Is it mobility or weakness deficit? Is it an error in training where that could be, I could ask you and look at their program and look at their volume of trainings. It's a little bit of both. I like to work with both type of populations. And going on the preventative soapbox, I think it's becoming more popular and I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but it seems like endurance sports are getting more popular in my cohort. I'm 32, so the millennials. And I think we're sort of going away from, obviously we're getting older from, going out and partying and everything. And I think the preventative and maintenance work is catching on to an extent in the physical therapy realm.
Mm-hmm.
I have the PTs and chiropractors I surround myself with are very much aligned with my mission is keeping people active, doing what they like to do. And I think everyone agrees that the preventative and maintenance stuff is getting some traction. One of the main issues is that our healthcare system does not value that at all. Like it's just not what our culture is in healthcare. It's now I'm sick. Okay, now I have to go to see my physician, or now I can't walk because of my knee pain. Now I have to go see an orthopedic, get an X-ray, get an MRI. And it's so costly to the healthcare system and to the patient itself. If you come in a few times a year, spend a couple $100 with a sports chiropractor or with a sports physical therapist, and you get ahead of the game, get a little achiness here, a little achiness there. We're here to coach you to prevent that stuff. I don't consider myself a healer. I am a coach for my patients to help them help themselves. If that means reducing the amount of painkillers they're on, preventing surgery or putting off surgery, reducing injections, cortisone, all that nasty stuff, and that's great. Reducing Advil usage, NSAIDs. So again, I think as a profession, as PTs, we're moving in the right direction. We're at the doctorate level now. I think we're starting to be respected a little bit more as far as being a primary care clinician. For those that don't know that are listening, in Ohio, you don't need a physician referral to see a physical therapist. You can just call up your physical therapist and go see them, unless you have Medicare as your primary insurance. That's the only insurance that requires you to have a physician referral for reliability reasons. Yeah, I think Ohio, they passed that law maybe 10 years ago or so. And most of my patients are direct access, like 99%. So it's great. Like for your clients too, you can educate, hey, I know this guy here, this girl here, this chiropractor here, this PT here. Get ahead of the game. Get on your maintenance game. If you have something that's aching, you don't need to do that multiple step of, oh my God, now I got to see my primary, then I got to see an orthopedic, and then I'll end up at the PT. That's just such a waste of time for, we're most clinicians, at least that I'm friends with, we can diagnose pretty well, and if it's serious, then go and see the orthopedic, get some imaging done.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I love everything that you said. I love the perspective you gave about that you're not necessarily a healer, but rather a coach. I think that's a really great perspective. I mean, obviously, to your point, like sometimes I do, when I see a physical therapist, I'm like, I just want you to needle this because it's really tight and I can't do this on my own. But I also am so grateful for all of the exercises that I've been given to strengthen my weaknesses so that I can hopefully avoid that in the future. And so, yeah, I really like that perspective. And it's actually something similar that my dietitian that I work with uses. Like she always says, like, I should not be working with you forever because I should be teaching you. And it's kind of what you're saying. Like, obviously you want people to come back and see you. That's not the point. It's not the point to like never see them again. But
right.
The point is, like you said, let's reduce the medication. Let's hopefully reduce this problem. We might have other things pop up because that's the human body and we're pushing ourselves.
Sure.
But how can we try to make this less often?
Yeah. One thing I tell my patients that are physically active and they're dealing with maybe it's Achilles tendonitis or patella issue or something. These are okay issues to have, right? You don't want diabetes. You don't want cardiac disease. You don't want COPD. You don't want to be morbidly obese. A little knee pain from doing a little too much running. That's all right. We'll figure this out. In the grand scheme of health issues, these are okay issues to have. That's telling me that you're out and you're liking what you're doing to the point where you're overdoing it sometimes. And that's okay. We're pretty good at treating those things in PT.
It's a good way to look at it. Like it's a pretty good problem to have if we're going to have a problem.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's a lot more serious things, and
for sure,
being able to move our body and it's just such a important thing. So, like you said, you just want to keep people moving and keep them doing what they love, which is so important.
Exactly. We are physical specimens that are supposed to be moving a lot. We are still cavemen, technically. We should be out there running and moving and squatting and lifting heavy things. And the human body, as you've seen with your slogan and everything, is capable of a lot more than what people think they might be capable of. And I guess you don't really know until you try, until you push it. Get uncomfortable sometimes, push and see what you got. I guarantee anyone listening now, if you're not a runner and you don't want to be a runner, if you're curious, give it a few months of running, get on a graduated program, and you're going to be really surprised with how much you progress.
Yeah, and just like anything, the first week to 2 weeks are hard.
Yeah, not as fun.
No, literally anything in life, it's hard to give up sweets. It's hard to, whatever.
Right.
And then you adjust and your body gets used to it. And then you almost like look forward to it. I mean, I know I do. And then you don't know what your life was like without it. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know, give it a try. Like you said, challenge yourself, try something new. You'll find that you probably will fall in love with something new and yeah, surprise yourself with what you're able to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly. I think life is about experiencing things. And hey, if you try running for a year and you don't like it, there's other things you can try.
Yeah, lots of sports, lots of
Yes,
sports out there.
exactly. Well, Jillian, I think this was a very productive conversation. I appreciate your time. I learned a lot. Hopefully, you learned a little bit. Love to have you back on, maybe in the summer at some point.
Sure.
Well, good
Yeah.
luck. Yeah, good luck with your training. Good luck with Rise and Rain. I'm dealing with a knee injury, so I should be back running hopefully in a couple months. And then I'll be hitting you up for a program because I would love to do another half marathon in the fall. I just can't walk as well as I want to right now, so I can't run yet, but it's getting there. But yeah, appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and definitely don't rush back from that knee too
Yes.
soon. And all of you, yeah, listening, if you're coming back from anything, don't rush. There's time.
There's
Just
time. There's time.
there's time. But no, thanks again for having me, Nick. It was great to chat with you today, and we will be chatting soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jillian.